Our talk is called Supervising for Equity, Culturally Sustaining Approaches in Clinical Settings. And Libby and I come from this work from a teacher. We're both in the teacher education faculty, and we'll introduce ourselves in a second here. If you're not familiar with Cal Poly Humboldt, we are the farthest north. CSU in the system. We're about 2 hours south of the Oregon border. We have, kind of like San Francisco weather in the summer, but we do live close to the ocean. It was foggy today and sort of raining when I got up, like misting. So if you're we feel for you that are having real summer, but we're enjoying ourselves up here in the fog, and you should come visit. It's a beautiful place to be and live, and we really enjoy working here and mostly serving rural communities in teacher education. So we have a credentialing program. In the secondary program, we have both an online credential program and an in-person credential program. Obviously our in-person credential programs in multiple single subject and ed specialists are locally serve the Humboldt County area. And then our online program, we serve mostly rural interns and student teachers who are in clinical settings all across the state of California. So many of you are from, places where we have student teachers located, but obviously if you don't work for us, you don't work with them, you work with your own institutions. So this is our agenda. It looks like a lot of stuff, but we're gonna really just have a moment. Really, we want this to be a space where we can learn from each other. So there's not gonna be a ton of us talking at you, which is sort of the goal. In my experience teaching, I've been teaching online, or we've had an online accessible program since 2010. And speaking at people in a Zoom setting is not usually very successful for all the reasons that Lisa mentioned. People get easily distracted, and there's a lot going on in your homes and whatnot. So we hope to make this a little bit more interactive. We utilize breakout rooms in our teaching practice online, and find it's a very successful way to get people to sort of focus on the content, experience and share their own experiences, and then give us a little bit of share out experience so that we can honor the experiences that you bring to your supervision practices. I know some of you are from yesterday. I learned some people are just starting out. Some people have been supervising for longer than I've been in education. So there's a wide range of experiences, and we want to sort of honor those. And I think sharing your experience is one of the ways that we can do that. We're also going to be focusing a little bit on our current political context, and sort of sharing with you how we are defining culturally sustaining pedagogies and how we ground that in our supervision work that we do at our campus, and hopefully give you some ideas to take it into your own. And then all of us use the teaching performance expectations, and we've found a way to sort of leverage those to use in the support of our work, which we define as culturally sustaining, and how we work with our supervisors to help them help their candidates bring more of that into their school site classrooms, whether or not their mentors are sharing and expressing that, and sometimes they are not. And so we sort of navigate those conversations, and hopefully you can help give us some ideas to as well as how to continue doing that. All right. um and then I think Libby's going to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Heather. So as Heather mentioned, we are, I think about an hour and a half or 2 hours from the Oregon border. So we are way up here in Northern California, and we are located on the present and ancestral homelands and unceded territory of the Wiyot tribes. Tribes and nations in Humboldt County include Hupa, Karuk, Matol, Talawa, Walaki, Wiyot, and Yurok. We make this land acknowledgement in recognition that our words must be matched by our actions and approach. So it's not enough just to say that we're here. It's not enough just to acknowledge this land, but our work actually has to match our commitment. So, in recognition of this place on unceded lands, we are committed to building culturally sustaining pedagogies and practices into our work as teacher educators. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means today and how we continue to navigate this as our current social and political context changes, and as we continue to better understand what culturally sustaining practices look like in the classroom and look like for us as we work with our teacher candidates. To introduce myself, as Heather shared, my name is Libby Miller. I was thinking this is my upcoming my 12th year as part of the California State University system. I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Ballinger at Humboldt State, now Cal Poly Humboldt, for the last 9 years. Prior to this, I taught at Fresno State, and so I love coming to this conference, as well as if any of you go to the California Council of Teacher Educators, because I get to connect with all of my former colleagues in this great network of teacher educators that we have across the UC and the CSU system in California. Um, I come from a background in secondary education. I've taught everything from 6th to 12th grade, English, language arts, reading, and writing support as well. Um, I entered teacher education 12 years ago because I knew I wanted to make an impact on teaching from the foundational level. I have taught literacy courses, foundations of education courses, school and society courses, but my favorite work that I ever do in teacher education is supervising student teachers. I love to be in the classroom with our students. I love to help them make that connection between theory and practice and draw what they're learning in their coursework at the university together with what they're seeing in their classrooms. And I love to work with candidates as they really grapple with complicated struggles and real life practical challenges that they see in their classroom and try to figure out how to become better teachers and how to find their footing as an educator. So I'm happy to be here today to talk with all of you about supervision.
All right, and I introduced myself in the beginning, so I won't belabor the point. But I've worked with Cal Poly Humboldt and Libby since she came. I think this is my 16th year here. I also have a background in secondary education, mostly middle school in Davis, California, where Lisa's located. And I got my educational leadership credential at in the Candel program at UC Davis, and that's how I got involved in the STENT network. And I did my dissertation on supervision practices, and it's the work that I do, and I really enjoy working with not only preparing supervisors in my program leader role in both the multiple and secondary program, but also being a supervisor myself. Like Libby said, is one of my favorite things that I get to do in my work in the School of Ed. So we're going to share a little bit about what that looks like. Um, we just have some quick suggested workshop norms. And I'm sure that, I didn't see anything problematic yesterday or anything, but we always try to start our classes with norms as well. We ask that you stay engaged, speak your truth. Anytime we're talking about culturally sustaining practices or anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's sometimes some discomfort or things that don't resonate with people. So experience that, and sometimes in conversations like this, it's normal to expect and accept non-closure on hot button topics such as this. So these are sort of the norms that we will assume, and feel free to reach out if you have things that are left over that you would like addressed by either Dr. Miller or myself.
I love this quote from Paulo Freire because it brings forth this humanizing element of this work that we do. Freire says, knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, with the world and with each other. I love that hopefulness. I know that in teacher education, sometimes in the work that we do, sometimes we can find ourselves saying, oh, what am I doing? How do we move forward for this? What do we do next? And so I love to invite that hopefulness, envisioning a better world and being humans in the world together, knowing that this work is complicated, knowing that anytime we work with students, anytime we work with people, anytime we work with groups and communities of practice, that this work is not straightforward. It involves dialogue, it involves critique, it involves continuing to look at our work and re-envision it together. And sometimes there's tension there. Sometimes it's smooth and straightforward and sunshines and rainbows, but it's not always that way. So I love this humanizing piece, and I invite us throughout this work and throughout our workshop today to continue to reflect on that, knowing that that tension is okay and it allows us to move forward.
All right. So, what we're going to ask here to start us off here is just to have a moment of reflection. This is sort of related to, and I won't, you can read the prompt yourself, but I'm hoping that in an era where I think we're entering an era, or we've been in an era where educational practices, especially those related to DEI, are under heightened scrutiny. And we argue that supervisors are playing a vital role in supporting candidates in both skill and sensitivity. So, in this moment of reflection, I'd like you to think about the following areas that you feel the most confident coaching and providing feedback. And then, if time allows, reflect on why this area feels most comfortable and how recent political pressures may influence your approach. And at this point, we're asking you to focus on instructional practices, social emotional support in the classroom, and culturally sustaining practices. So, this is kind of a prior knowledge activation. Like I said, I know many of you come to this work with a lot of ideas about culturally sustaining practices and ideas about supporting students both socially and emotionally in the classroom. We're going to put you into breakout rooms now, and in that breakout room, I'd like you to think about which areas of supervision you feel most confident in and why, how supporting equity and inclusion in your coaching, especially in today's political climate, what that's looking like for you, or how you're starting to think about approaching that. And then one strategy or phrase that you found effective in navigating sensitive topics. So again, there's kind of two asks here. Is one for reflection, and we'll pause here before we go into breakout rooms, but I'd like you to think about, what, as a supervisor, which of the following areas do you feel most confident in coaching and providing feedback on? So, instructional practices, social emotional support in the classroom, and culturally sustaining practices. And if you want to just take a moment, maybe take a note about which one of these you feel most confident in providing feedback and coaching on when you're doing your supervision practice, maybe writing it down, and some thoughts on that you can share in your breakout room.
Feeling really comfortable with instructional practices and social emotional support. And this, we surveyed our supervisors as well, and this aligns with what we found with our supervisors. Our supervisors are saying, I can support my students with SEL. I can support my students with social emotion, with instructional practices. I understand culturally sustaining practices, but I have a really hard time supporting my candidates in understanding how to implement them, or how to pivot, or how to make their curriculum more culturally sustaining.
I was going to say the same thing, and it's good to see. I mean, it's not great to see that people are not feeling comfortable in cultural sustaining practices, but I think that in the research that we've done with our own supervisors, like Libby was saying, usually instructional practices are the work that supervisors do, and sort of like the first thing that we see, right? When we walk into a classroom, we're looking at instructional practices, and they're sort of the thing that's in the forefront of what's happening. And then I feel like with an increase in professional development related to, and an increased focus both at the district level and at the PD level on social emotional support in the classroom, and understanding how important that is to student success, it makes sense to me that it's coming in as a strong number two, because there has been a lot of discussion about the importance of social emotional support for students, for teachers, and a lot of skills that we can incorporate, mindfulness practices that we can incorporate into our classrooms to make learning more possible for more of our students. And I think that makes sense to me. I think, you know, part of the reason that we're highlighting um, current political pressures is that they are directly connected to the importance of emphasizing culturally sustaining practices. And that's the one that in our study, our researchers felt, I wouldn't say like the most uncomfortable with, but the most familiar with the dialogue surrounding it, but also unclear about how to transfer those sort of into the classroom. So thank you for helping us understand sort of what you're feeling strong and coaching on, and providing feedback for your candidates. We're gonna put you into breakout rooms, and Libby put, but Libby, maybe you need to put them again. Oh, you just did. Okay, thank you. We have, because when you go into breakout rooms, these slides are going to disappear, although they are linked to the resources in the conference program. So if you ever want to go back and see what we did, you can click on the link of resources, and it will the PDF of the slides will be there. But in this breakout room, it's just an opportunity to share in a smaller setting, and you can use these questions as a prompt, or you can just share about, you know, from the previous prompt about what you were sort of thinking about related to that. You're going to be in these breakout rooms twice in this session, so if you want to take a little bit of time and introduce yourselves, and just say what university you're from, or not share that, that's, you know, fine either way. But really what we're focusing on here is our current political climate, and maybe how that has altered or changed the way that you're feeling about diversity and equity, and culturally sustaining practices, and then strategies that you have been considering or are currently implementing when navigating sensitive topics like this. So let's take about 15 minutes. We'll bring you back at 10:05, and then we will discuss and share out what you talked about.
Nice job, Heather. We're going to run out of time again.
I know we always do.
I know. It's okay though.
It's fine.
I thought, well, we can put them in breakout rooms for 5 minutes, but they always have things to talk about. I don't
I
even feel
know.
like
I
I
think
can
it's
start.
probably better to just
Let it,
allow
yeah.
them to talk. I
Okay.
probably should have said 10 minutes.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, it's good. It's good.
Got kicked out, so I apologize. But I'll address. They're going to allow me. Heather is going to allow me to talk first, so I can address Matt.
Oh, we understand. We understand.
That
Okay.
button popped up, and I was like, "Bing!" I didn't even read it. I was like, "Get
Okay.
out of my way."
Thank you for spending that time in groups. It sounds like it went really well, and this is an opportunity to share out. We notice Libby and I do this every time, but we get talking and then we run short on time, like all teachers do. So we call it a whip around where I come from, but let's quickly just go from group to group, and if there's anything you want to share related to the discussion you had, let's start with that.
Denise, I saw you unmute yourself a minute ago.
No, that was accident. I was just going to say thank you for sharing my points as well. That's all. Can I put you on the spot, Carly, and ask you to say something?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Is it my question? Okay. So I'm not a supervisor, so I just had a question from a student teacher lens. I was wondering for culturally sustaining practices, how student teachers can use culturally sustaining practices while also following the curriculum, because the curriculum isn't really student-centered and doesn't really like center like cultural identities. So how can we manage that?
Well, I feel like that's a perfect lead in,
Wait,
and I'm also aware of our time. And so
and
I think
oh,
hopefully,
okay.
oh, go ahead, Edwina, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what did you think about what we were saying, though, in response to?
Oh,
Oh, the response. Okay. So the response I felt was very helpful because it wasn't just like the curriculum, it was really about the student teacher like teaching. So that's why I feel like with my focus of teaching, I just got to focus on like how I am teaching, the ways that students are learning, but the variety of ways. So that's what I got from the conversation. It was very insightful. But there's more that y'all said. There's if you want to add on.
And at the last word, it was just interacting. And I told her, I don't want to simplify it, but that it wasn't a separate thing with curriculum. And then cultural awareness was on there. And we talked about how it's all one, and it's more of an interaction. And the other, Julian, I think she said it's like an umbrella, but it's more student centered and assets and all that.
I always think, how am I making space for my students' voices, identities, and knowledges in my curriculum, in my instructional design, in my classroom? How am I making space for them to bring their knowledges and sharing that here? I think that leads us right into our definition of culturally sustaining pedagogies. And I also want to acknowledge that I know Celeste has something to share. And Celeste, as we run out of time quickly, please don't hesitate to share in the chat box and continue this conversation. There are so many there's so many rich pieces of knowledge and information to share, and just what has been shared in the last few minutes, as a result of your breakout room, it's like I'm writing notes down and I'm taking things that I can take back and feeling inspired by it. I think it's always important for me in my work to pause and take a moment to really think about what culturally sustaining pedagogies is, and to reflect on that again and again and again, because this is the knowledge that I get and go, okay, I'm culturally sustaining now, I got it. But it's something that I have to continue to think about and look with every group of students in every classroom, with every time I put curriculum together as a teacher educator in my own teacher education classes, and then also as a supervisor in the field with my students. So I want to take a minute just to dive into this definition and draw back the roots of CSP, or culturally sustaining pedagogy. pedagogies. I want to note first that we're using the plural form of pedagogies because there's not one culturally sustaining pedagogy, but it's multiple pedagogies. And we draw from a variety of sources and we adapt this practice, but it's not something that's solid and fixed, but it involves all of our knowledges, all of our backgrounds, all of our experiences, and multiple ways of creating instruction and implementing that instruction in our classroom. The term was originally coined by Django Paris in 2012, and it was further expanded through Paris's work with Sammy Aline through their dialogue and reflection on their work as educators and their experiences as teachers with their students. Kelly Pizzio and her colleagues define CSP as teaching that helps culturally and linguistically diverse students develop and maintain, that maintain is really important, cultural competence, academic success, and critical consciousness. That maintain is really important, as well as the idea of critical consciousness. Now, that critical consciousness, Paulo Freire defines for us as the ability or agency to intervene in reality in order to change it. So it's not just being confident and aware of our cultural backgrounds and experiences, but it's being able to look critically at reality and be able to have some agency and have experienced that agency and in that empowerment to change our own reality. From Alim and Paris, culturally sustaining pedagogies is pedagogy that seeks to perpetuate, foster, to sustain linguistic, literature, and cultural pluralism as part of schooling for positive social transformation. So again, we see that focus on positive social transformation at the center of it. So it's not just about, it comes from culturally responsive instruction, Louise Moll's work in Funds of Knowledge, which provide that foundation and where we talk about leveraging our knowledges and expertise for learning, but it moves it forward another step to that level of critical consciousness, to that moving towards positive social transformation. Can you shift my slide, Heather? Thank you. So as I mentioned, culturally sustaining pedagogy is a step further than culturally relevant pedagogy. And it's a loving critique of these asset-oriented pedagogies. So Alim and Paris came and said, Moll's work, such as with Funds of Knowledge, Gloria Ladson-Billings' work with culturally responsive pedagogy is the foundation of this work. So that word loving critique is really important. So that loving critique, it provides that groundwork, and it comes out of the idea that asset-oriented pedagogies are important, but they fall short of making that sustained social change because they neglect to focus on critical consciousness and decentering the white dominant discourse that is pervasive in education and society. And Gloria Ladson-Billings herself suggests that culturally relevant pedagogy is important and valuable work, but in order to make sustained social change, we must continue to move forward. So it's continuing to progress this work into new realms as we move into new social and political context. So I'm going to pass it over to Heather to talk about what this means related to our teacher performance expectations.
Yeah, so this is part of we're sitting with this dichotomy of, our supervisors come with strong instructional practices and confidence in the work that they're doing, an understanding of both social emotional learning and its importance to connecting with students, but feeling like they have an understanding of what culturally sustaining practices are, but are sometimes encountering resistance from either their school site administration or the schools that they're working with, or maybe the mentor teachers that they're working with, or even reluctance from their student teachers to fully embrace the importance of incorporating culturally sustaining practices in their work. And so what we and then on the flip side of that, even when they are experiencing everyone being on board with culturally sustaining practices, sort of how to do that, and sort of like Carly said, well, how do I do that but also teach all of and maybe Carly, this is not what you said, but like this is what some of our student teachers say is, how can we do this with and also teach the content that we're supposed to be teaching? Like where's the the Venn diagram of culturally sustaining practices and the content I'm required to teach, and how do those interact with each other. And so what we've done in our work with our supervisors is, and we talk a lot about the tyranny of standards and the tyranny of content that exists in our various disciplines in secondary and also multiple subjects, but also the sort of like the tyranny of the standards of the TPEs, right? There's so many TPEs. They have substandards. How do we address every single one of those in our supervision practice? First of all, in our program, we say you don't have to cover all of them because, in alignment with accreditation, we highlight, and our instructors kind of take on TPEs that they highlight in their courses that the student teachers take over the course of their credential year. And we've gone one step further to identify ones that in some ways can really only be seen in the field work setting. And we want to encourage our supervisors to focus on focus on TPEs when they're doing observations that support culturally sustaining practices. So we identified TPEs that we think fit that bill. So we're hoping that by sharing these with you, if you're working in a program that you think is not continuing to highlight culturally sustaining practices, that you can help them identify these as areas to focus on, or even in your own supervision practice, considering noting these when you find reluctance in mentor teachers or student teachers about whether or not these culturally sustaining practices are important or relevant to their work, because they hopefully, in our conversations and in our backgrounds that we've shared, you feel like they are. So we I won't read these to you, but we've kind of identified these as being culturally sustaining supportive. TPE 2.2, which is creating learning environments, and you can read that one here. And then TPE 4.1 really encourages or requires that candidates locate and apply information about their students in the instructional planning process. So when you're not seeing culturally sustaining practices, identifying these TPEs as areas that you need to see as a supervisor is what we encourage our supervisors to do to help start and bridge conversations into more culturally sustainable practices. Another one that we've identified is TPE 4.4, which is, and I've highlighted the piece here in bold, which is another online teaching strategy I've learned for to kind of help focus people's attention. But this idea of using culturally appropriate learning activities, instructional materials that help all students, including English language learners, is a good one to use. And then with the most recent updates, we have the literacy standard, TPE 7, and this again reinforces our requirement to support teacher candidates in culturally and linguistically affirming and sustaining practices in instruction. And this mostly the literacy standards thus far have been related to multiple subjects and English language arts, but they really are supposed to go into all subject areas. And so we really help our supervisors and our teacher candidates ground their supervision feedback and practice in the importance of these specific TPEs, and requiring that all of our candidates demonstrate some level of competency in these before leaving our program. I don't know if we don't have time to go back into breakout rooms. So, I'm wondering, just if as we wrap up with our 6 more minutes, if there are questions or if we can kind of discuss amongst ourselves ways that you're thinking about TPEs as a way to leverage culturally sustaining lenses, or even just things, challenges related to culturally sustaining lenses, or even successes that we share, that we could discuss. And I think, Libby, if you want to put these into the chat, then we could go back to whole screen and we can kind of look at each other's faces, which I prefer to slides. Unless people want to go back into the breakout rooms and end it there. Sometimes breakout rooms are like an easier way to share thoughts and to continue thinking.
I vote for that, but that's just me.
Okay, good. We're going to put you back in and we're going to let it go until the end. So we'll sign off and say goodbye, but we'll stay in the break. If you want to come back after those 5 minutes are up, we'll do that. Okay. Thank you.